Welcome to week 7. It's week 7. Laynie, how do you feel about week 7? You like week 7?
I love week 7.
Yeah. Are you yourself as a poet somewhat, greatly, or minimally influenced by the New York school?
Hugely.
Okay. Can you say why? I haven't even started with announcements or introductions, but just in briefly, why?
One word. Bernadette.
Bernadette. Okay, great. All right, good. Yeah, hello, everybody. We're here. We're back in Philly. It's great. We have some wonderful friends with us today. I'm going to introduce them, reintroduce them. We have a phone number, 610-616-3208, 610-616-3208. I have a book to give away. I bought it in Scotland at Christy Williamson's bookstore called Tell It Slant in Glasgow. And it's not an easy book to find. I read it on the plane, and I'm happy to give it as a gift from here, maybe even back across the pond. Anyway, and if you want to Skype us, Modpo Pen is the Skype handle. Again, 610-616-3208. First caller gets a book. Some announcements. Next Wednesday, week 8, kind of a week 8 look back and look forward, because Bernadette is part of week 7 and also 10, or 7 and 9 writing experiments. It's 7 and 9. We are going to, thanks to Laynie Brown's curation of this event, which has been months in planning, we're going to have a special Bernadette Day on October 25th, which is Wednesday. We're all really looking forward to it. Laynie has arranged for Bernadette's family, including 2 of her children, Phil, her partner, 2 of the students from the Writers' House who were very involved with Bernadette, who spent at least a summer plus working with her at the house up there in New York State. We have some poets who are Bernadettians, and Laynie has organized all of this. So what's going to happen is we're going to have a noon webcast. Am I right? It's noon.
Yes. And
the noon webcast it'll be a longer table and maybe some people with portable mics in the audience here. Bernadette focused, but also a week 8 focused webcast. We don't exactly know how that's going to go, but it's going to be lots of fun. And then in the afternoon, those who are far away from us won't get a chance to see this, but we're going to be making 3 new Modpo Plus videos about Bernadette Mayer poems, and these videos will entail discussions with some of the people that I just mentioned. And then at 6 p.m., Philly time, 6 p.m., we're very excited. There's going to be a reading here. And Laynie, just rattle off some of the names of the readers who will be doing this.
So everybody you just mentioned, plus Leanne Brown and Julia Block and Brenda Coltis.
So it's going to be a group reading in honor of Bernadette here at the Writers' House at 6 p.m. If you're in Philly or New York or Washington or Boston, get your butts down here and be with us in these seats. And if you are tuning in, we will send out a link through one of my announcements. All right? So that's next week. Just want to note that essays are due this week. That is due to be written and posted this week on a poem by Alice Notley. I also want to point out that Ray Maxwell has been in touch with us. He is going to be leaving Lisbon. He's, I think, out of the hospital on his way home from Lisbon to Washington, D.C. in mid-November. He seems to be improving a lot, and he is a Modpoer who goes back to our first year, and we respect him so and wish him the best. If you want me to put you in touch with Ray, you don't have his email address, you can just write to me and I'll put you in touch with him. A shout out to Leanne Brown, who joined us for the entire week in Scotland as a friend, a friend of Modpo, a friend of Modpo. She's amazing, and we just love her, and we so appreciate her company. Graham, and I'm going to get the Meekley. Graham Meekle is here in the room. Now this has never happened before, and I'm sure that Zach will try to get a little screen on. There he is. Okay. Graham has done something no one else has ever done. Last Thursday during a webcast, Graham was there in Edinburgh at the Scottish Poetry Library, And now he has some business to do in Philadelphia, and he's here again. So 2 weeks in a row across the Atlantic. How fucking cool is that? Graham, you've got a mic. Can you say hello?
Hi, everyone. It's just delightful to be here. And where are we going next week?
I know. Maybe Austin, Texas. This book is Graham's newish book. It's called Deep Fakes, and I'm privileged to have a copy. I'm not giving it away because I haven't read it yet, but this is just, I'm celebrating Graham as a writer, and I should point out, as I did last week, that Graham was my student in a class, and we did an independent study together in 1987. Okay, that's how old he is. All right. I want to say a special hello to Davey Niddle, who has joined us. Hello, Davey. How are you, my friend?
Oh, hey, Al. I'm good. How are you?
It's really good to see you. Fans of Davey, FODs, know already that Davey is a member of the faculty at University of Delaware, and is just lighting the place on fire, I'm sure, with his amazing teaching and mentorship. And so, yes, it's a little hard for us to engage Davey constantly in ModPo, but we've agreed to, there's a cameo appearance today, and we're so excited. Hi. Kate is here. Hi, Kate.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Kate. And Jason is here. Hello, Jason. How are you?
Hello, I'm well.
Good. Erica Kaufman is here. Hey, Erica.
Hi there.
Hello. Allie's here. Hi, Allie. And I hear you have to leave a little early, so you'll just get a word in before you leave. I'm not going to worry about that. It's up to you to get those words in. Dave Poplar's here in an earlier time zone. Hello, Dave Poplar. Sophia is here sitting next to me, as she always seems to do. Sit next to me. Thank you. You keep me company. I appreciate you. Laynie Brown is here.
Hello.
What? Are you making wisecracks?
No, I said no problem.
No problem.
Happy to keep you company.
Okay, great. That's a wisecrack, but that's all right. Laynie Brown, hi.
Hi.
Laynie, thank you for all the curating you did last week in Scotland.
My
It was
pleasure.
superb. And JS is here. Hello, JS.
Hello, hello.
So I believe there's already someone on the phone, but what we're going to do is we're going to stall that off, and we're going to go around, and everybody's going to say a poem this week, on this week's syllabus, ModPo Regular, ModPo Plus, a poem that they think is on their minds, is a favorite, whatever. So we're going to start with Kate, and Davey will be on deck.
Let's see. I am thinking about Hanif Abdurraqib's USA versus Cuba and how he shows the existential stakes of a first generation New York school poem to always also be political, but he still allows the universal existential questions to remain open beside the political ones.
Perfect summary of that. Thank you, Kate. USA versus Cuba. Davey and Jason's on deck.
I'm thinking about Mount St. Helens because, like a lot of Week 7 poems, it's a poem about teaching, and that's not always how we talk about the Week 7 poems. But I think that we think about the Week 7 poems as like existing on the street and moving between urban spaces, but they also really exist in the classroom. And coming back to these poems, I'm thinking about that relationship.
Do you have that text in front of you or near you?
Yes, I do.
Can you say a line or two that is meta-pedagogical?
Yes. I tell my class, it's a spine. I mean Joel Colton's, a snap of his nerves, heading right, the infinity of his line, born, die, every time.
So it's an instruction, and it's explicit that the class is hearing Eileen say this, and one imagines somehow a visual display of the poem as a spine,
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Yep. Jason's up, and JS is on deck.
Hey, I'm thinking about a ModPo Plus poem, John Ashbery's Just Walking Around.
Just walking around.
Yeah, and I'm interested in that poem in the way that it's the tone. I'm interested in the tone and the rhythm. in relation to what's being said. And I mean, I think that my gut wants to go to O'Hara, but I'm putting on my intellect. And so I'm interested in the intricacies of what's going on in that poem.
Lovely. I love that poem too, as you know. J.S. followed by Erica.
Yeah, I have another John Ashbery poem, which is Some Trees. And I guess I'm just really lingering on the many intimacies of this poem, of the intimacy of the poet and reader, just person to person, person to nature, language to poet, language to reader, and just the way that it proliferates those.
Love that. Thank you. Some Trees. These are amazing. Erica's up, and then I'm going to see who's on the phone, and we'll invite that person to give us a favorite. Erica?
I've been thinking about Eileen Miles's writing, which is in ModPo Plus, which I've begun almost all of my semesters with, because it's both metapoetic and metapedagogical in a certain way. The tone of the poem feels so imperative.
Which one? The
writing. I can connect two things.
Can you read that poem? It's very short.
Yeah. I can connect any two things. That's God. Teeny piece of Band-Aid, little folded piece of Band-Aid. I ran to the bathroom to see my face. Sometimes I don't want to see my face in the mirror. Sometimes I can't bear my thoughts. Sometimes I can't do anything, but that's okay. Band-Aid, book, God. That's right.
That's right. Erica, not to belabor the point, and we can come back to it, but and fans of Erica and of ModPo know this already about your interests, which coincide with mine. Can you say in like a sentence why in your professional life, in what you do, and also as a poet, why is it important for poetry and pedagogy to be connected?
Wow, that's such a tiny question, Al.
Yes. It's a wee question.
Yeah, I think that the thing that is important is that poetry helps us think about other ways of thinking and being, and different ways of engaging with language that expand the possibilities of language. And I feel like that's the thing that I always want my students to be doing, is to really attending to both how they read and how they write, and expanding what they think that they know.
Lovely. I love that. And I will add that I think that it's good for us, all of us, ModPo teaches me this too, to think about a poem not as a 19th century style teacher, professor, professor, a poem that sort of tells you what it thinks and you have to receive it, but as an interlocutor, in that sense, an educator. A poem is an educator. A poem convenes an opportunity for learning with the subject position and its subject matter. Wonderful, thank you. We're going to go to whoever's on the phone, and that person is going to be invited to say a favorite poem. Who do we have?
Yes, checking in, Al, we have Stanley out in New Mexico saying hello.
Stanley, how are you? Stanley, can you hear me? All right. Chris is going to work on that, okay?
I'm muted.
Oh, hi. You were muted, Stanley. That's what happened. How are you?
Did I take my mute off? Because I was on the phone, and what did I do, Chris?
You're actually good now, Stanley. You're okay. We can hear you. How can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So,
fantastic. You know what I think is happening, Stanley? I think you have the sound on your webcast. So if you can take the sound down, you're talking to us on your phone, correct?
Yes, I have the sound down on the webcast.
Okay, good. So we're talking to you on the phone.
Wait a minute, I'll mute. Yeah.
Okay.
And it cleared up.
Okay, great. I'm so glad I'm an English professor who, after a while, learned how to do radio talk show kind of stuff. Turn your phone down. Anyway, For now, I'd like to invite you to offer a favorite poem from the week. Then when we're done, we'll come back to you for your question or comment. Is that okay?
Sure. Well, I'll go with Some Trees and just go with that.
Okay. Tell us why briefly, if you don't mind.
Because, well, there are so many poems in this week, but the reason that I called is because I'm so excited that the guy from Scotland is sitting in front of you.
Yes, Graham.
I can't hear you.
Yes, Graham is here.
And I watched. That was such a cool discussion, and I'm glad. I asked Chris if you guys shot a lot of film to share with us later, and he said he's got a lot to edit. Anyway, something happened this last week. I just want to jump in. The Emily Dickinson is like, I'm being, everything is coming up Emily Dickinson, and a thought went up my mind today that I've had before, and I'm excited. So we'll talk.
All right, Stanley, thank you.
And I'm glad. Thanks for the update on Ray.
Thank you, pal.
Thanks for the update on Ray Maxwell.
Yes, and it's always good to hear your voice, Stanley. Be well, okay? Thank you. That was Stanley from New Mexico. The number is 610-616-3208. Graham, did you want to just say hi to Stanley? I mean, he seems to have enjoyed you need the mic, though.
Yeah, hi, Stanley. It's very nice to hear your voice, and I like your choice of poem, so thanks for that.
Lovely. Okay, so we're going to go to Allie for a favorite poem, and then Laynie.
My favorite poem this week right now is February by James Schuyler. Partially because it's been a long time since I was in New York City, and
you missed
he just
it, huh?
does. He does such a beautiful job in this poem of capturing time passing, but also the perception of other lives and nature, the natural world, from his window in New York. And I think that's something we don't always appreciate in the New York school.
Yeah. Yeah, and a shout out to Davey, who was one of the engines driving the inclusion of Schuyler in the course. It's become more prominent because of a variety of conversations and discussions. So, and also clips from webcasts where Davey and others were talking beautifully about Schuyler's importance. Okay, Laynie, followed by Dave.
I'm going to go with Bernadette's Chocolate Poetry Sonnet.
Would you read it aloud? Do you have it?
Of course, I do. When my children were growing up, we never had candy at home, but when we went to poetry readings, I always brought chocolate bars to make the poetry palatable or more interesting, or so they'd be relatively quiet. It only backfired if the reading lasted too long. Then there'd be hell to pay, but I deserved it, right? After a while, if I knew the reading would be long, I'd bring two, so I began to think of long readings as 2 chocolate bar readings. Eventually, I'd bring 2 just in case, sometimes saving 1. Poetry is as good as chocolate. Chocolate's as good as poetry.
Yay. And we had some conversations about that poem filming one of our videos in Scotland, which puts me in mind that I didn't say in response to Stanley that, yes, we made... Chris, how many videos did we make? 20? No, well, I hope it wasn't 25.
Yeah.
Laynie, how many?
About that, yeah.
Oh my God.
It's my fault.
Oh, wow. So we met some very cool Scottish poets. Oh my goodness. It was, and some other characters along the way.
Yeah, so one of the things you'll get to hear is a conversation about a collaboration by 2 Scottish poets, Maria Sledmere and Colin Hurd, and they wrote a book called Cocoa and Nothing and it has an epigram from this poem, the last 2 lines at the beginning of the book.
From Bernadette. So we're going to be adding those videos as they get edited to certain weeks, specifically when they're related of to ModPo Plus, and then we're going to create, as we did for a Canadian sampling of contemporary poems, videos about them. We're going to do the same thing. So we're going to have a special section, a Scottish sampling. Okay, thank you, Laynie. We'll go to Dave, followed by Sophia.
I like Variations on a Theme by William Carlos Williams a lot. It's lighter, but I just appreciate
Kenneth Koch, I think. Oh, right. I'm sorry.
The title, right? The title is Variations on a Theme by William Carlos Williams by Kenneth Koch. You're right.
Yes. Good.
I love the way it shows homage and affection and respect to William Carlos Williams, not just by imitation, but by, I think the technical literary term is busting balls, by needling him, and it's funny, it's interesting, and it's a great show of respect.
Yeah, respect is not straightforward in that situation, and I think Koch tries his hand on something. You know, what did Williams give us from that, and how can one parody it and exaggerate it and still do it some honor formally? And now Sophia.
Well, I had a really nice conversation in my office hours this morning with Vijaya, Barbara, Appy, and Mona, and we talked about Bernadette Mayer's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I love that poem, so I think I have to go with that. I find the combination of the domestic and the wild in this time frame, or in this frame of disrupted time, just really appetizing.
Bernadette is the best at time and disrupted time. Okay, Allie Castleman, you get to choose. The only one you can't choose is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because Laynie has already prepared, a question about that, which we'll do a little later. So, Allie, USA versus Cuba, Mount St. Helens, Just Walking Around, Some Trees, Writing, Eileen Miles, February, Variations on the Williams, and not Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or frankly anything else, but we might boo you because we worked hard to accumulate that list.
Have we talked about writing on a webcast before?
Probably, but I think that might be pretty good. So why don't I find the audio of it? We'll play it, although Erica's already read it. And then I'll ask Kate, JS. Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay. Davey and Laynie, four folks to talk about it. And I think it would be really good if we let Erica start us off in kind of focusing the conversation on whatever Erica thinks would be most productive. Does that sound fair, Erica? All right, I'm going to find it. Writing. Is it in ModPo Plus? I think it is. Is it in the main syllabus?
No, ModPo Plus.
ModPo Plus. So bear with me, folks. I'm going there. Erica, while I'm finding it, would you attempt to narrow the scope of the conversation we're about to have on it in any way you like?
I kind of want to suggest that we think about line breaks.
Very good.
And the actual form of the poem, because in contrast to some of the other poems that have come up and what folks have mentioned, this poem's so skinny.
It's skinny.
And it does so much, so I wonder if that might be an unusual place for us to start.
Okay, great. So Kate, Davey, Laynie, JS. I'm about to play Eileen Miles performing Writing, this is a performance here at the Writers' House, I think.
Writing. I can connect any two things. That's God. Teeny piece of Band-Aid, little folded piece of Band-Aid. I ran to the bathroom to see my face. Sometimes I don't want to see my face in the mirror. Sometimes I can't bear my thoughts. Sometimes I can't do anything. But that's okay. Band-Aid, book, God. That's right.
Okay, so Kate first. Any thoughts on this? Erica's asking us about lines.
Yeah. What I observe is that the attenuated form manifests the process of drawing things together as they happen. So it has this kind of long stretched out quality that evinces the poet's moving through space and time and pulling in what is around them into the poem.
Oh, love that. Cannot wait to hear what Davey has to say in response to that.
That makes me think of the fact that the poem starts with two things, but the list that we get at the end of the poem is actually a list of three things. It's the list Band-Aid, book, God, which when I taught this poem a number of years ago, I had students wondering about whether book is like the hinge between Band-Aid and God, but also something that and actually Lily Applebaum did a collaborative close reading with my students back in 2018 of this poem. We filmed one, I think it's somewhere on the ModPo site. And something that we were wondering about in that conversation that I think the line breaks really bring out is whether it is the speaker of the poem who can connect any two things or the reader of the poem. That the reader of the poem is like, well, what do I do with Band-Aid and God? The way that they've been connected is really just that they've been lined up, that each of those words, Band-Aid, book, God, contains a line. And the reader of the poem is maybe the person doing the connective work saying, what's the relationship between Band-Aid and God? Why are these things in this poem? That the fact of putting them in the poem is an invitation to the reader as much as it is connective work being done by the poet themselves.
So, Davey, the reader could be taking over the first person or part of the first person. Wow,
they're certainly invited to.
That's very cool. Don't think we've ever read the poem quite that way, but it seems to make tons of sense. Can you take that just further for a couple of more seconds of smart talk, which is to say, what are the consequences of any poem having its reader be the first person?
Well, I mean, the theme that like when both Erica and I were talking about Eileen Myles' poems in that introductory moment of drawing poems out of the week 7 syllabus, the theme is about pedagogy, and I'm still thinking about Erica's, characteristically brilliant language for thinking about why you teach poems in a writing classroom, to be able to have students think that they can do stuff with words other than conform to teachers and employers' expectations of how to use them, that they have some creative agency with language. And I think that this is a poem, and Mount St. Helens also, that the Myles poems in the syllabus variously do this, that they make reading an agential process. They think of reading not as, and this is like what we were talking about a minute ago, not as a process solely of perception, but as a process of participation, something that really ModPo is founded on and thinking about, and that's a surprise to the reader. Not only that a reader comes to the poem saying, I'm going to be an agent, I'm going to co-constitute with this poem, but that a reader reads the poem and is shocked to feel invited, learn something about themselves as an agent of dealing with language in the process of reading the poem, and that's available to a reader who wants that from a poem and a reader who is shocked to find out that a poem can offer them that all the same.
Wow. That was so great. And I guess one of the things that we're going to turn to JS next, one of the things that that makes me think of as an educator myself is that my dreams, my emotional hopes, every time I walk into a classroom are such that the people in the room will do what it takes to connect things that are a challenge to connect, so that I'm not doing the connecting. I'm inviting them to say, this is a challenge. This is not... so much of what happens in a classroom is easy. It's all been pre-digestible-ishness, just connected in advance. And all the conversations of connecting were going on behind the scenes by all the smart people and the people with PhDs. And then you walk into a class and you say, here's how it connects. And I think one of the things that poetry teaches us as teachers is to make proximate to the classroom the parts and do the connecting together. You say, a co-creation of meaning. Thank you, Davey. JS, thoughts on lines in this poem or anything else?
Yeah, I really appreciate Davey's reading about agency and it being shared by both the narrator of the poem as well as the reader, because I think that where I was first thinking about was the little moments of futility in this poem. Where although it opens on, I can connect any two things and that's right, that's God. But I'm really struck by the image of little folded piece of Band-Aid, and the Band-Aid that's not connecting anything, but just sort of rendered inert, folded in on itself, taped to itself and not, healing or connecting anything. And that sprawling downwards into sometimes I don't want to see my face in the mirror, sometimes I can't bear my thoughts, and these things that a Band-Aid can't hold together, that are difficult to connect. But yeah, I guess while I was lingering on these moments of things that don't congeal, thinking about, again, what you were saying, Al, as well as Davey, about how the reading process and the collaborative reading process is maybe more powerful a connecting agent than a Band-Aid.
Yes. Well said, J.S. Thank you. And Laynie. And then we're going to go to someone on the phone and find out what our next topic is.
I'm thinking about Erica's question about line breaks and why the poem is so thin on the page. And one thing that occurs to me is that it's so thin and it's so small and it can go anywhere. I'm thinking about the poet as a mover and the poem as the place that can go anywhere. And despite the difficulties encountered, that there's this toolkit. If the I is the poet and the poet is offering up the lines about the Band-Aid, my favorite part, Band-Aid, book, God, here's your toolkit. You can do anything. You can go anywhere. So it's offering that to us.
Yeah. The word empowering, which is often a cliche, is what comes to mind. Poem says, here are some pieces. You can do anything with this.
Deft
but let's see if
maneuvering.
You can do it. Yes, deft maneuvering. Let's go to whoever's on the phone, and Jason, Erica, Dave, and Sophia, and possibly Grant. No, we don't have a phone call. Okay, cool. So let's go back. Allie, let's go back to the list, and you can pick out another poem. But what I'd like to do before we do that is take a look. I forgot to assign someone to look at the YouTube chat. Is anybody following the YouTube chat?
Yep.
Laynie, can you tell us what's going on there? And hello to all the watchers.
Okay. Well, I see Vijaya talking about JS's comment. Folded Band-Aid equals difficult to connect, beautiful. Mona, the poem is thin like a Band-Aid.
Oh, yes.
Miranda, and connects things like a Band-Aid. Darlene, interesting process within the poem. 1, can. 2, I'm so incapable. 3, I accept that. Here I am, or something like that. LOL.
Darlene participating at 7:36 a.m. in California. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Allie, USA versus Cuba, Mount St. Helens, Just Walking Around, Some Trees, February, or Variations. Pick one.
What about the Bernadette? Oh, you said not Bernadette Mayer?
No, because we're going to get to that in a minute. But you could do it. I mean, we could pick another Bernadette poem, but only Invasion was suggested in the first round, just to stick arbitrarily to. No?
Let's do Variations.
Oh, the Chocolate
I feel
Sonnet
like
was suggested.
What was?
The Chocolate Sonnet, the poetry reading poem. We could do that if you really want to do Bernadette.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Do we have an audio of that? I think we do, right? Yeah, I'm almost sure of that. Yep, I found it. Here it is. Okay, I'm asking Jason, Erica, Dave, and Sophia to comment on this.
It's called Chocolate.
Okay, hold on. Bernadette, hold on.
I found this poem that
Bernadette just is very persistent, right?
She's ready.
That's a voice that we hear in our heads. Zach, are you ready? Yes, okay, here's Bernadette at, I'll tell you where this reading was. Oh, here at Penn. It was the Writers House Fellows reading that Bernadette did a few years ago.
So I found this poem that I was telling you about. It's called Chocolate Poetry Sonnet. When my children were growing up, we never had candy at home, but when we went to poetry readings, I always brought them chocolate bars to make the poetry palatable or more interesting, or so they'd be relatively quiet. It only backfired if the reading lasted too long. Then there was hell to pay, but I deserved it, didn't I? After a while, if I knew the reading would be long, I'd bring 2 chocolate bars. So I began to think of long readings as 2 chocolate bar readings. Eventually, I'd bring 2 just in case, sometimes saving 1 for the next occasion. Poetry is as good as chocolate. Chocolate as good as poetry is.
Bernadette always laughed at her own poems because of just the humor of it and also just the pleasure of reading. So we're going to start with Jason. I'm going to invite Jason to be the one to narrow the topic of our discussion, if Jason wants.
Well,
or say whatever you want to say.
I'm thinking. When I was listening to this poem, I was interested in the minutia of, being so technical about the chocolate bars and having like this relatively like complex system. and I wonder though, like I could, in a way, unlike a lot of things we've read up to this point, this poem to my ear when she was reading it could have been it could have been prose, but it's not. It's a poem. So I'm curious about the what work is being done on the language by it being framed as a poem, and in which it's a poem in which poetry readings are being made fun of.
Yeah.
So it's that metapoetic, or
yes,
it's reflexive in that.
It's
way.
also, it's not just metapoetic, but it has a metapoetic relationship to the institution of the poetry reading as an event and as a space in which parenting must take place, because it's a place of social responsibility. I love that focus. I think that's great, and I haven't thought about that quite that way. So we're going to go to Sophia next, followed by Erica, and Graham. I would love for you to get in on the conversation, and also Dave.
Well, I'm thinking about the measure of time in this poem, and I'm thinking about all the different marks of measuring time that we see. Like the first line is "children are growing up," and that's like
Is that what the first line is?
Yeah, when my children were growing up.
I hadn't even thought of that.
So there's this like huge, long expanse of time that a child grows up within, but it's also like broken down into measures of smaller time, like a 2 chocolate bar reading. That's a long one. And it's making me think of the different ways we measure our time and how that shifts as we grow up. Like when I was a kid, it was time to come home when the streetlights turned on. And I have no idea what time that actually was in the scope of the day, but I knew that specific time that the lights turned on, it was my time to go home. And I just think it's like, it's just a sonnet is kind of a meaty form anyway. And so I'm just thinking about like melting all these readings into this one pot of like physical reward that these kids sat through. And I don't know, it's delicious.
It is delicious. Laynie, I'm going to break the order here because we're going to turn to Erica next, and Graham and Dave. But I just want to throw at you a general New York school question. Isn't it? I'm going to make a statement and then you can agree or disagree and riff.
Okay.
I think the contribution of the New York school, especially the present tense poems, especially the I do this, I do that poems, O'Hara's Day Lady Died being sort of the classic in this chorus, they're playing with the idea that time marked in a poem, in the actions of a poem, can be messed with, stretched, and can be compared to the poem time, the time in which the poem gets enacted, the time in which the poem is heard or read too, but that it takes Bernadette Mayer in the so-called second generation to actually explore further what time means in all the meta senses. And I'm beginning to think this discussion today is putting me in mind that Bernadette Mayer may be the poet, as it were, of our time, the poet of the idea of time, parenting time, mother time, getting from one place to the next time, being with others time, in a way that feminist readings of Bernadette work to explore. And it may be, in addition, a redefinition of New York school, disregarding gender. It's an overall triumph that she's accomplishing here. And I would love for you to react to the question of time.
Wow. Well, I feel like the question of time is connected to what we're going to talk about with the invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Definitely.
Kind of exactly. So I'm going to go a little bit sideways and say that the New York school is so much about sociability, that I do this and I do that, and being in relation in this pleasurable way, in which most poets are not having kids, or the kids are totally invisible in the poem. And part about the thing I love about the chocolate poetry sonnet, also as a parent who had young kids and was trying to get to poetry readings, is that it's like, whatever it takes, how am I going to get there? I don't have a babysitter. I don't have money for a babysitter. I don't want to miss the event. I don't want to give my kids too much sugar. So I'm going to reserve candy, chocolate, so I can go to the reading with my children.
And get a poem out of it.
Right. So it's a kind of this, it makes visible that work of parenting, which mostly was taboo, mostly wasn't talked about, mostly men would say, oh, well, she's not serious because she's having children. So
and you did much better than I did, Laynie. Thank you in suggesting the topic, because it is about poets' time. Does a poet have time? You think of some, classic, I don't know, 19th century, I always mess with 19th century novelists, some classic 19th century novelist who's shut the family out, go away, or finds a space, and then does the durational work of writing a novel. Bernadette thought that was bullshit.
Yeah, and she also loved being a mother and being a poet, and didn't ever think of it as, we're looking at the socioeconomic difficult realities of time and resources, but her attitude was always, the children are an inspiration, and the children are in the poem, and the children are writing the poem with her.
Beautiful, thank you. We're going to go to Erica, then Graham, then Dave, and somewhere in there we're going to get someone in who's just called us. So, Erica, thoughts on this?
Yeah, there are two things that I'm thinking about, and one, building on what Laynie said, I would just add that there's a way in which this poem is also drawing attention to often invisible labor, and really naming that as a productive space for poetry making. And kind of relatedly thinking about form, I'm in a form mood today. I love form. So I'm thinking about what a great sonnet and how it does the Shakespearean thing, but it does it again differently, where, the 12 lines or, the block develops this scenario, which Laynie was beautifully reading, as far as, the idea of making visible the act of mothering and inviting the children in to be an inspiration, and, not staying at home and those sorts of things. And then those last two lines do something very different, where, we're not solving the situation or coming to any sort of conclusion. We're continuing to open things out.
Yes. Sonnet. So the Shakespearean sonnet, forgive me for the condensation, it's often about two things, love and the nation.
Yep.
And Bernadette does both of those by, first, including in love, not the, some dark, mystical object of desire. Sorry, I just sort of waved away a whole bunch of Shakespeare, and I didn't mean to do that. But and turn that into a love of your children, to want them to witness what's going on in your world, which is to say poetry readings. And second, the nation becomes the poetry community that you need and must get to, even if the kids are going to be annoying and interrupted, because those are your people. And Bernadette felt that. She felt it. So the nation becomes the poetry community. Let's go to Graham, and then Dave, and then we'll go to the phone. Graham, what are you thinking?
What I'm thinking probably connects with what Jason said right at the beginning about this being kind of metapoetic or commentary on the poetry reading as a form or a space. But what I really like about this is the kind of conversational tone, right? I deserved it, right? You know, but within what's a more kind of classic and staid and traditional and structured form than a sonnet, right? So she's got that kind of conversational, ironic, arch tone where she's talking to somebody else about the experience. But she's managed to put that into a really structured classical format.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, that is great. Erica's, it's Form Day up there in the Hudson Valley, and so Erica's Form Day seems to have extended down to the Middle Atlantic. Every day should be Form Day. Dave, your thoughts on this? Then we'll go to the phone.
What I really like is how there are multiple experiences going on or being described. There's the creative, the poetry reading itself, which is sort of the subject of the story, but it's in the background. And then there's the practical reality, the real focus of what the poem is saying. And they're very, very different things. But also, if you take a step back, you can actually look and say, hey, that's actually what the poem itself is doing. It's describing the practical reality of stuff, but through the creative act of poetry. So, it's almost like flip, where you read it in the first sense, it's sort of like poetry that's wrapped in this practical reality of the words of the poem. But in another sense, it's also like practical reality wrapped in the form of a poem. So it's a lot.
The comments that have been made put me in mind of third space theorizing, where in this case the room of the poetry reading is a third space. The first space being, of course, the home and family with its own socializing pressures. And the second space is a standard classroom. And when David and I were riffing together about what happens when a poem goes into a non-Milesian classroom or some traditional classroom, that place becomes a second place. But the third space is a space in which this great now gone poet drags her children to it, and then makes the poem a site of a different kind of learning for them, right? And it's a space that acknowledges what it's going to take to get these young people to want to be educated to the sociality of a poetry reading and a poetry space. I think, Erica, somebody, maybe the two of us, needs to write about this poem as radical pedagogy, as a Freirian third space, because it's drawing us to it. And it also should make us envy the kind of person who can take all the frustrations of the day, and pull the kids into a world that is a world where the people in the room are committed to learning by trying to mix the miles, trying to piece together the things that have been given to you, which includes a chocolate bar. Let's go to the person on the phone, find out who that is, and then I'm going to ask a few of us to respond to whatever that person tells us, and then we're going to turn to Laynie. Oh, you know what? As a matter of fact, I think what we should do is talk to this person and invite that person to participate in the invasion conversation that we're about to have, led by Laynie. So let's get this person into the conversation, and then we will go to Laynie.
On the phone, on Skype, I should say, our dear friend T is calling in. And just
T from the
say
Philippines. Oh, T, how are you?
Hi, Al. How are you? How's everyone? I've missed you all.
Missed you so much. Make sure that your the computer that's feeding out the webcast audio is turned off so we can just talk on the phone, okay?
Yeah, I'm just on Skype.
No, you sound good. You sound good.
The volume is off.
Okay, let me just say a heart-filled hello to you. I know that things get in the way, life is, gets in the way, and that you always seek to get back to Modpo. And a few weeks ago you did, and here you are, and just want to speak on behalf of your Modpo friends to say we love you. We always think about you. I have some tea paraphernalia always in my office on the 3rd floor of the Writers' House. So I think of you every time I'm there. Lots of love, T.
Thank you, Al. Well, I just really called in to say hi to everyone and, hope everyone is doing okay despite this relatively tough times. And I'm not sure how much I can contribute to the conversation, but I was thinking about what you said about parenting and poetry. And I guess what I've been thinking about is, I guess as a poet myself, I've always think about the poems I write like my children. But as a reader, I've always thought sometimes of poetry as sort of the tools that I use to parent myself and the tough situations that I get in sometimes. So yeah, it's really tough right now in the world, and I just hope everyone is being held by poems they love and they find comfort in. And yeah, I just want to say hi and hope everyone is okay. And
Thank you, T.
take care, everyone.
Thank
I
you,
miss
T.
you.
Thank you so much. We want you always to be part of our community. And I know, we're in touch separately, and I hope we stay in touch always, always. And, I hope that someday you can find a reason to come to North America and hang out with us in person. That would be great. I know, the team is advocating for a trip to Manila, but that would be hard to do in a week, I think. And the jet lag, which is bad enough from Scotland, would really be intense. Okay, T, thank you. Be well. Have a great day, okay? And that was T.
Thank you. Take care. Love you all.
Love you too. That was T. De Los Reyes calling from near Manila. And it is tomorrow at about noon there. Okay, let's look at the stream, the comment stream a little bit, Laynie Brown, and then I'll ask you to introduce the invasion conversation.
Okay, what's going on here? Castaway says, using poetry to parent yourself. Yes, yes. Jane Ward, without poetry, this world would be hell.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah. Miranda, invasion is another great example of self-absorption in many ways, all about what she is thinking and doing and how she is interacting with those around her. I'm reading the comment stream backwards, by the way. I don't know why. Maybe I got that from Bernadette. I enjoy Frank's self-absorption, says Jane. Lowell, hi, Ray. So maybe this is why no Frank poems were chosen. These topics are not self-absorbed as he is.
That's lovely. Laynie, I'm going to ask Kate, Davey, Allie, and JS to respond to your questions.
Okay, so I will say the question, then we'll hear Bernadette, and then I'll repeat. Here we go. So we're looking at Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and specifically the lines, the day before yesterday, we turned clocks back 1 hour, which made it seem like every day will have an extra hour in it, not only of darkness, but of just plain time. So I want to invite us to think about the phrase plain time. What is it? And how do she or any other poets this week help us to think about time newly? How do the poets spend all this new plain time? And where do we go with that?
That's lovely, and I should have been able to get the poem in the time that it took for you to talk about the question, but I didn't, but I'm getting there, okay? It's in the main syllabus.
Will you remind me the people who are responding? Kate?
Kate, Davey, Allie, and JS.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to week 7, and invasion. I'm doing Control F for invasion, and I found it. Here it is. It's a good reading. It's an old reading, as I recall. And here it is. Guys?
wedding and the day before
Let me go
election
back
day.
to the beginning. Here it is.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Moon out and no snow yet, November 1st, the first anniversary of our wedding and the day before Election Day, 1976. Yesterday was Halloween. Next Friday I have an appointment with the dentist. And the following Tuesday is Lewis's 32nd birthday. Exactly 1 week after that, Marie will be 11 months old. The day before yesterday, we turned the clocks back 1 hour, which made it seem like every day will have an extra hour in it, not only of darkness but of just plain time. The time I used to spend skipping lunch is longer. The time for dinner is too early now. The time for sunset comes too soon. The time between dinner and Marie's bedtime is too long. When it's time to go to bed, there's still a few hours left to read. I'm dreaming twice as much as before. I spend all my new time lying in bed thinking. Last night I saw Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and tonight when I came into my room to go to work, I found an old seed pod on the floor by my desk. In the movie, if you see one of these, it's time to die. It's time to write some letters. Good cold air comes in my window. It wakes me up. We had a bottle of champagne, and Marie went to sleep without crying. It's time to read Fielding's Guide to European Travel and the Alice Toklas Cookbook again. A few books by John McPhee, our new American Heritage Anniversary Dictionary, The Adventures of a Mathematician by Stanislav Ulam, and The Wild Boy of Averone by a behaviorist psychologist about a boy brought up by wolves.
I love hearing your voice, Bernadette.
Miss that voice, don't we?
We do. So, just plain time, what is it in her work or any of the New York schools, poets, how does their poetry help us to consider time newly? So let's go first to Kate.
I don't know where to start. I'm so excited about this poem. It seems to me she's contrasting arbitrary human and mechanical containers of time with time's contents. So I believe plain time, she refers more to the contents of time. So it ends with the sort of like granularity or the particular details that are that a day or a particular designation of time contains.
Fabulous. Contrasting containers of time with content. That seems, I'm latching onto that and what you said. That's really helpful. Thank you, Kate. Let's go to Davy.
I wonder if another way to think about plain time is also as a kind of relational mode, that like what makes time plain in the first half of the poem is being able to relate the present to personally significant moments in the near past or future. So we get so many markers of time, the anniversary, the dentist appointment, the 32nd birthday, Marie being 11 months old, the day before Election Day, Halloween, and plain time is maybe a kind of positive space of time, where if darkness is a kind of negative space around time of like, we get this discomfort and the lines following it, that everything's sort of out of whack. The time between dinner and Marie's bedtime is too long. Plain time is maybe just time as it is made sense of by being in relation to other personally meaningful things. So it was like what Sophia was saying about as a kid, knowing time being meaningful because there was a relationship between an external signal, the streetlights coming on, and knowing that it was time to go home. That seems to be in this poem. Bernadette Mayer makes sense of time in a pretty similar way, and the time change seems to like kind of throw that off. It's not possible to put things in relation in the same way, and plain time is relational time, is time that feels meaningful because it's slotted into a network of other ways of marking time in her life.
Fantastic. Yeah, that word relational, it seems so key for this week. And I wonder, you could answer, it could just be thrown out for the general discussion. If there's any other poem that comes to mind this week that word, I mean, it could be so many. Do you want to throw one out or we can We can go on.
I mean, for me, the obvious one is February, which is a really different kind of marking time, but it's the like marking whatever it is, like 10 or 15 or 20 minutes in which the woman comes to her window, the light changes in this way. And the way that Skylar's marking time is different. It's much more solitary. It's less about social and familial dynamics and more about environmental and atmospheric dynamics, but it's still about feeling not at sea, not lost in time, by being able to pick out other markers and record time as it shifts and put those markers in dialogue with one another. And I think that he's doing something similar with a really different kind of information.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Davey. Let's go to Allie.
Yeah, I'm particularly struck in this reading of Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Lewis's 32nd birthday, because I'm 32 now. And when I read this poem for the first time, I was 22 max, like probably younger. And I think that just kind of brings home the point of how much time we have spent in this endeavor, spending our time doing what we're doing right now, reading, co-creating, convening over poetry. And I think that's really relevant to how plain time is spent in this poem, because at the end of the day, when kind of like the rush and chaos and obligations of the day are over, it's time to read and of course to write this poem. And in the reading and the writing, like within that is an experience of how we can experience time in the most freeing sense, which is a sense of like losing time, losing track of time, being in this almost kind of like time suspended space. And I think, like 12 years have passed while we've all been in this kind of time suspended space. And I think that like the kind of extra hour that daylight savings time creates, I do think that this gives us back more time just being here together doing this.
Wow, Modpo time.
What a great gift. Also
That's
to think
beautiful.
about the immortality of, Lewis will always be 32 in the poem. And we hear Bernadette's, that was a reading from a long time ago. Her voice is different. And I just want to acknowledge too, the recent loss of Louis Warsh, relatively recent loss of another, really important poet and artist.
How cool is it, Laynie, that we're talking about the family and the kids in particular, and two of them will be here in a week as part of this.
And talk about time. When I met them, they were little kids, and I was a baby poet. When 32
you were a baby poet. I'm really having some fun
old.
Visualizing Laynie, the baby poet. Did you, when you were a little Laynie poet, did you flourish with the leopard skin cape?
Of course. But when I met Bernadette, I mean, I was early 20s, so the time goes on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Allie. Let's go to JS.
Yeah, I guess I am thinking about why plain time and not free time. That there's something about free time that, you occupy free time, you sort of do things, you occupy free time. And there's a way that plain time is just like time for time's sake or something, time existent in itself, if that's even possible. And I guess like why I am thinking about this is, so much of this poem and about like daylight saving time is the sort of ridiculousness of the notion that we just get an extra hour, so much so that it's now the mathematics of time just fall apart for the rest of the poem. Like the time I used to spend skipping lunch is longer, and even skipping lunch, like it's again about this absence. It's about this you're skipping lunch probably because you have something to do, and then dinner is too early now, and then suddenly the 1 hour that you get, like by the time you go to bed, there's still a few hours left. Like everything just sort of falls apart as far as the mathematics. But yeah, and then just even going onwards, the list of books at the end again, I think just speak to the way that this idea of plain time, or like time where we could just get an extra hour. The accumulation of books, it's not or that links them. It's Fielding's Guide to European Travel and the Alice Toklas Cookbook and, the new American Heritage Anniversary Dictionary, where like suddenly the idea that there could be plain time just allows everything to happen, or it's about possibility. So in some ways, I guess I'm really just thinking about how plain time is undetermined time, and sort of the delight of it is being able to think about all of the things you could do with plain time, but it doesn't actually happen.
That's so brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I'm thinking about how time itself, it's made up. We made it up. It's not a thing, and yet it's all that we have. So it's this great invention, it's this great sense of play. And another way to think of plain time is it's time that hasn't been layered over by stuff. So it's an ingredient. What am I going to do with this plain time? Am I going to make a souffle with it? Am I going to read? And then there's the time that we read the books as if we had an alternate life to just read. And then there's the time of dreaming and the time of occasions. But the plain time seems to be, like you said, possibility. Davey said it's positive. It's open. It's an ingredient. We get to decide what it is, and it's an invention anyway.
And then just to double the experience, you open up a book which has its own chronology and its own time, which could be a multi-generational story. And then you hang around your kids who have little kids, really no conception of time. They would just be happy playing the same game over and over again for 10 hours if you would let them. And then there's the time of the wild boy of Aveyron, who was raised by wolves. And when he was brought back into, conventional settlement, had no sense of how he had grown up, how long it had been since he was with people who walked around worried about time. She is, as I said earlier, I think the New York School poet that we should turn to when we want to think about how a poet dilates and criticizes the way we do time. Laynie, that was great, and thank you, everybody. What I want to do now, as we head toward the end of the webcast, is to put into the record 2 comments that were made in the discussion, the special subforum for the webcast. One is a comment by Carolyn Pooler about Alice Notley, and the other is Appy, our friend Appy from Prague. I believe it's her last name is pronounced Vasova or Vakova. Apollina, everybody knows Apollina. A question about a comment about the New York School, and I'm going to ask Sophia DeRose just to respond to that when I get to Appy's question. And then we're going to do final words, and these can be somewhat extended final words. All right, so Carolyn Pooler says, refers to Alice Notley's poem, How to Get an, I think it's how really to get an apartment, or how to really get an apartment. And this is a poem that our Laynie Brown picked to be the object of essay assignment number 3, which people are writing about. Highly recommend the poem. And Carolyn says, this poem has opened my eyes to how the New York School poets discovered the way to the subconscious by flipping the script and taking control of the ethereal reality through anti-narrative form. And then Carolyn asks for additional thoughts on this method, and sadly we don't have time, but I'm glad to have put that out there. And Carolyn also notes that Alice Notley will be coming to Denver, which is where Carolyn is, on November 4th, and Carolyn is hoping that she or they can go to the reading. And now the question from Appy for Sophia DeRose. Hi, this is Appy with another basic, non-basic question, but I can't call in as it's too early. I finally made the connection between the New York School poets and what I'm going to call abstract expressionism. And yesterday in Erica's office hours, yay, Eric, was Appy there? Yay. We talked about Alice Notley's Songs and Stories for the Ghouls and how the I of that text is fictional. It got me thinking about the I of O'Hara and Mayer, Bernadette Mayer. If one of the characteristics of abstract expression is that it is not figurative, then what is an I in a non-figurative poem? I've been more or less reading it as O'Hara and Mayer, respectively, but now I sense it is maybe more complicated than that. Where would you even begin? What does I do when it's in a poem that experimental?
Well, okay. Thanks, Happy, for this question.
Or thanks, Al, for directing it to you. But you can do it because Band-Aids, God, I can do anything.
I guess I'm thinking about what Davey said earlier about New York School and generally how the New York School is interested in being in relation. And I'm thinking about my reading experience of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and how I went and looked up all the books at the end of that poem. And that enriched my moment of reading because I learned about these other books and had an encounter with other authors in time that I otherwise had yet adorned with a plan or an appointment or whatnot. I kind of like made time for myself to learn something from the poem that like the poem just urged me to do because I wanted to know more about it. And in that sense, then I kind of became the I of that poem doing that reading in the poem as well. So I feel like this is kind of a way of skirting around your question because I don't have a perfect answer for it. But I think the I in New York School poetry is maybe not fictional, but just relational. And it can shift from writer to reader to and back. And that scale is important, I think.
That's a wonderful response, and it's a really great question. And I guess the spirit of the question, or the spirit of my understanding of Appy's question, is that what we do in ModPo is that we follow the Steinian and Ashberian concept that it is only worth, when in the world of poetry, it's only worth doing, or as a reader apprehending or comprehending, if it's hard. If it's what Joan Rotalick in The Poethical Wager refers to as complex forms. Right? Complex forms counterintuitively are not less connected to the world as we live it, but actually much more closely connected to the world as we live it. And that it is pleasurable and also responsible, I guess, in the sense of poetics, responsible for finding that I, maybe your own I, in a complex form where the I is messed with, so that we have less rather than more of a stable sense of who we are as we move through a shitty world. So we have time for final words, and we have someone on the phone, and that person on the phone is actually going to have to forego their question and be part of final words. Who is it on the phone?
Squeezing in one last call. Dr. Empress Rose from Massachusetts is on the line.
Hi, Empress Rose. How are you? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, Empress Rose.
Yes, can you hear me?
Absolutely. You know, we've gotten to the point where we're doing final words, so I want to give you a chance to be involved in the rotation of final words. So when we turn to you, all you have to do is add your thoughts. Forgive me if we don't have time for a question, but I hope you don't mind being invited to just add your thoughts.
Well, no worries at all. As you guys were talking about time and the importance of time, for myself, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the importance of time within the poem itself, self-expression and culture. However, I know that I will have another time, and as well, I can add the comments within the group itself.
Okay.
However, in terms of time, it's no time like the present. I am a poet, and I would just like everyone to know as well, I turned my book of poetry into spoken word this year, which is currently nominated for a Grammy.
Wow. Did you say nominated for a Grammy?
Thank you, guys.
Wow.
Yes, considered for a Grammy nomination, yeah.
Wow. Could you say your full name again and then the name of the work that we should look for online?
I'm Dr. Empress Rose, and I recently started the class, and I've been trying to keep up.
That's
Dr.
great.
Empress Rose, the name of the book, which is in book, audio, and spoken word, is Behind Closed Doors,
Behind
which
Closed
is autobiographical, by the way.
Okay. Behind Closed Doors. I will get us a copy here for the Writers' House. And Dr. Empress Rose, thank you. I've seen you around in the forums and so forth. Thank you so much for being part of ModPo.
I love it. I love it. I'm
Oh,
going to tell
good.
everyone about it.
Come
by the way,
visit
yeah.
Philly. Come visit Philly and hang out with us. We'd love it. Okay, thank you. Have a really great day. Thanks for calling. So we're going to do final words. We're going to start with Kate. Kate's up and Davey's on deck for final words.
My most memorable office hour ever was last year's discussion of the incorporation of Sophia's Cereal by Bernadette Mayer.
Another kid poem.
Excited
Yeah.
for another go at week 7 tomorrow at 11 in my office hour.
Lovely. Davey, followed by JS.
I just wanted to encourage folks to check out the wonderful poem talk conversation about Anne Lauterbach's Under the Stein, which is a ModPo Plus poem for this week, which is a poem that the conversation we've been having is about time and its representation and how poems are good at helping us deal with forms of time that like rational or linear or, separate sidebar conversation about New York School and capitalism, worth having at class, worth having another time. But our sort of normative structures of time accommodate a bunch of stuff that happens to us, but not a bunch of the rest of it. And the New York School poems are kind of about, okay, what do we do with navigating and thinking through and having the tools to deal with stuff that happens that's not part of the way that we think we're going to be able to structure our time with those forms of disruption. And I think that Under the Sign and the conversation that the poem talkers have about it is one other useful tool that's part of the Week 7 materials.
Thank you for that recommendation, Davey. And I just want to say the obvious, which is that we so admire you and we're so happy that you're here this week. We miss you. I miss just seeing you all the time, going for runs and things. And I also know that you're doing a special cameo office hour. Do you want to plug that, please?
Yeah, today from 1:30 to 2:30 Eastern. Come and chat with me about whatever, about the Week 7 poems or anything else. I've missed y'all too, and it's really nice to see everybody.
It's just good to be in contact with you. So just for people who might not know, the way to get to an office hour is you can go to the resource tab on the left side of any ModPo page, click it, and then look for office hours. You click on office hours, then you pick out, in this case, Davey Niddle, and then you go to Davey's special subforum. Another way to do it is just to go to the discussion forums and click on office hours, and then the subforums are for each TA. And you go to Davey's subforum and click on it, and you'll see a post that, in fact, I made that has the Zoom link for Davey's office hours, and then you join the Zoom. Thank you, Davey. We're going to go to JS, followed by Jason.
Yeah, so I'll do a little quick plug for my own office hours, which are tomorrow, Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. One of my favorite hours that always feels like it's too short. But yeah, I guess just reflecting on, I'm really still stuck on Mayer and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And particularly too, a resonance between that poem and also the Barbara Guest poem 20 and the dilation of the time before falling asleep as, you know, a moment when thoughts run wild, when maybe we have these poetic thoughts. But also, I think as far as the desire for plain time and the desire for more time, the more contemporary phenomenon, which I think is called like revenge procrastination or something, where like before sleeping, instead of sleeping, you like scroll through your phone a lot. And I'm just like thinking, I guess, about how the sort of structuredness of our daily lives can like lead us even to these moments where instead of letting our thoughts run wild, we sort of get controlled by the algorithm. But I think that was maybe just like, my own little thought spiraling away from the poems. But yeah, the pleasure and possibility that could be that hour before bed that sometimes gets occupied not by interesting books, but by like scrolling through Instagram.
JS, can I just say that your involvement with ModPo this year is just such a complete and total pleasure. I mean, I don't know how such a rookie can just fit right in so well.
Everyone's made it so easy, including the whole ModPo community. I mean, it's such a delight.
It's great. Well, it's just really nice to have you here, and you're always got such great things to say. Jason is up next, and Erica will be on deck.
Yeah, I'll plug my office hours, which are at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, and I'd love for you to come in.
That's Wednesday tonight, right?
No, it's Thursday.
Thursday. Thursday at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thursday, 8 p.m.
And you are very generous in your office hours because you often say, "Oh, let's just hang out for a few hours." Appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you want to stop by at like 10 or 10:30, feel free. I'm kind of really excited about this question of time in these poems, and wondering what it feels like in these, say, I think we can call those Bernadette Mayer poems more or less I do this, I do that poems, as much as the Frank O'Hara ones. And what they're doing is so interesting in relationship to the modernists of 50 years previous to them, who are more seem more these poems seem to be trying to kind of carefully hold, like I was going to use the word capture, but that's too violent. Like the poems are trying to hold an experience in time, and it's like holding a bubble of time that the reader can enter into and be in that time, and that's really interesting. Like they're not trying to write about a rose and preserve the rose. They're kind of holding on to like a non-repeatable, unique, subjective experience of a duration of time. And I wonder what has got, like, historically, what's going on that would draw their attention so much to time. Because looking at Ashbery, all the Ashbery poems, Amapa Plus, all are about time.
Yeah.
And so why? And I wonder why. They're concerned about time in a way I don't think that the modernist poets that we read are in the same way.
Yeah.
Or any other poet, they're concerned with it's like a virtual simulation. You get to go in and it be in Frank O'Hara's body and get a sense of what his experience of time was.
Yeah. I would like to think that this historical cultural answer to the question would have something to do with these people coming of age in the late 40s and 50s in the U.S.
Absolutely.
But
yeah,
and
so.
that's a That's a fascinating question, and I myself have written a little bit about that, and I find it really compelling. Jason, thank you. We're going to go to Erica, followed by Graham.
Thanks. I'm also thinking about time, and I'm particularly thinking about this idea of plain time that Laynie was pointing us to. And I'm thinking about how plain time might be the moment where one is actually able to attend to things or to pay attention differently or to notice. And with that in mind, it makes me think about Barbara Guest. You know, I'm thinking about what JS was saying about 20, but also the poem Roses, which is in Modpo Plus.
Yes.
Where you see, you know, in conjunction with time in the poem, there's also an attending to that's happening, which I don't think can happen outside of quote unquote plain time. And, you know, just this is a great week. So I also want to ballyhoo week 7.
When we first met years ago, we talked about this being your favorite kind of poetry. And also, I just want to ballyhoo that you use the verb ballyhoo, which you got from me. I'm very proud of colonizing that.
I thought that came from Gabby.
No, Gabby got it from me because Gabby was like, what kind of word is that?
So good.
I think we should all use the word ballyhoo.
Ballyhoo.
Yeah. Graham, followed by Sophia. Graham, thank you for coming over the Atlantic just to be with us at this webcast. It's so good to see you twice. We don't see each other for 37 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
We don't see each other for 37 years, and then I see you twice in 2 week time.
On 2 different continents.
Oh my gosh.
I would echo what Erica was saying there. I think this is a great week. One of the things I really like about it is how, as you work through the poems, so many of them seem to be in dialogue with the kind of the sense of time that O'Hara has in The Day Lady Died. Right, he's got throughout that poem, he's got nothing but time. Right, until the very, very end, where he has this epiphany, and he's like, "Oh wait, you know, maybe it's finite after all." Whereas the starting point with Bernadette, the poems we looked at, is this frustration with the lack of time. You know, all these appointments and anniversaries are the body snatchers, I think, in the poem that are kind of eating her up. And I think, to me, it's the key word there, the key phrase there is not just plain time, but it's just plain time. It's that frustration and exasperation. What I need is just plain time. So those kind of dialogues, and there are other examples, obviously, but those kind of that kind of dialogue around the concerns that are set up right at the very beginning of the week with O'Hara is fascinating, and it's really interesting to kind of make those connections as you go through.
Graham, that's marvelous, and it's really great to see you. Thank you for sitting in today. Such a treat. Sophia, followed by Dave.
I'll be quick. I'm feeling the lack of Leanne here, and I miss Leanne.
Habituated to that good spirit.
And
right?
I feel like if Leanne were here, she'd pick up on the pun of plain time and say, "What about airplane time?"
That's actually a really good imitation.
That's good.
Can you do a little more Southern accent in that?
What about airplane time?
That's exactly right. Oh my God, that's so right.
So yeah, miss you, Leanne. Miss your puns.
Oh, that's lovely. Yes, Leanne, shout out to you. We're going to go to Dave and then Laynie.
It's so funny because I was just thinking about plain time in that way, just because when you're on an airplane, you're forced to do nothing but just sit there. So you're more keenly.
Al will work all 8 hours of it.
I worked on my book for 8 hours. Yeah.
I witnessed.
But you're still more keenly aware of time because you're just sitting there. It's you can distract yourself in front of you, but you can't move around and things like that. Yeah. But just a couple quick things. First, a plug for office hours. My office hours are Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I want to plug everybody's office hours because from speaking to people who come to my office hours, they say how everybody runs their office hour differently. It's just a different experience, a different vibe. So for people who haven't gone to office hours or maybe who've only attended 1 or 2 people's, try just bouncing around everybody's office hours because it's fun. It's a different experience. You might even find places that you vibe with even more. And most importantly, go Phillies.
Well, I knew you were going to say that. you make friends in office hours. I mean, it tends to be class-like or club-like. People come to the same and they see each other. So it's just as much about the friends you meet from the different time zones as about the person who's sponsoring the office hours. Laynie Brown, final thought.
Wow, office hours, 4 p.m. Mondays, be there. It's so fun. It's a great group. And then I just wanted to ballyhoo some newish content in ModPo Plus for this week. There's a newish conversation with on Barbara Guess, the minus ones that we made in Los Angeles with Pragita Sharma and Jen Ileana Hoffer. That's fantastic. And then one more. What was the one more? Oh, Alice Notley. There's some new Notley content that we made when the fabulous poet Hua Wen was here. So check those out.
Yes. Well, my final thoughts, just a couple of plugs, ballyhoo. First, modpo.org. If you go to modpo.org and you click on Explore Modpo, you get to the database. And that is where you can just click on ModPo Plus Week 7 and see absolutely everything that's in ModPo Plus right there in front of you. We have curated this site with some help from various people. Shout out to Chris Foreman in Los Angeles, a longtime ModPoer, who gave us the wherewithal to do this. We have been lovingly working on it. Don't worry, if you like the Coursera site, it's right there, but you can always go to modpo.org, which every click of an item sends you back. You can go to YouTube, you can go to our media server, or you can go back to the Coursera site. Totally recommend ModPo Plus, seen through the search engine of modpo.org for Week 7. Wow, great stuff. Finally, lastly, shout out to the ModPo team, those of us who were traveling together on the last night of our trip. We usually have what we call a spitballing session where we think about new ideas for ModPo. Very dangerous because it turns out to be 10 new ideas and it makes everything more difficult. But this time we just decided, we got, somewhat drunk.
I had an idea. I just like to put it
You
out
had
there.
what?
I had an idea at the dinner.
Yes. Okay. Let the record show. Sophia had an idea for the future of ModPo. But point is, we went around and we talked about each other and we talked about how wonderful it is that we are the configuration of people that we are, and said nice things about each other and said nice things about a lot of people that we have met along the way in the ModPo community. And so it was kind of lovey-dovey. I think there were some tears. But I think most of all, I think of my life at the University of Pennsylvania, and ModPo is a major part of it, and it shouldn't be because I'm salaried to do other things. But I just love this, and I love all you guys, and even Chris and Zach. No, especially Chris and Zach. They got lots and lots of praise, and I think Zach switched the camera quickly back to them. Do that again. Oh. There they are. Hi, guys.
Hey.
They are amazing. They carry so much shit around in vans that we didn't really need. And I think they actually like it, but it's not easy to carry webcast equipment across the Atlantic. So anyway, we had so much fun. We love you all. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next week for Bernadette Day on October 25th, starting at noon with a webcast and 6 p.m. for an amazing reading you won't want to miss. Goodbye, everybody. Davey, we love you. Thank you for participating today.